So, good evening, everybody, and you're very, very welcome, everybody at home, wherever you're joining us from, to this evening's Let's Talk Equine. And I'm really, really delighted to be joined here this evening by Victoria Teuton, performance coach based up in County Down, and of course Joe Burke here from Cloonisle Stud in Castlegar in Galway. So a big welcome to both of you here this evening, and thanks so much for giving up your time to be here with me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Wendy.
Yeah, great to have you here. So look, just to give people at home who maybe don't know you as well a little bit of an introduction or a little bit of a background about you both. So of course Victoria has enjoyed successes with Irish Draft Performance and Working Hunter classes. She's mounted the reserve champion of the Performance Irish Draft class at Balmoral in 2019, champion and reserve champion Performance Irish Draft at Balmoral in 2018, reserve champion Performance Irish Draft at Dublin in 2017, and champion Working Hunter at Balmoral in 2016. Just some of the more recent highlight successes that you've achieved, Victoria. And she also coaches riders, some who've won at Hoyes and Balmoral and Dublin, and many championships between them also at local and county level. Joe then, of course, Joe, a successful breeder and producer, mainly of Connemara ponies alongside Dad Eamon, and specialising in the production of stallions. And many, of course, will be familiar with stallions like Cormor Cashel, Cloonisle Cashel, Lanier Cashel, Banks Timber, and Manor Duke, to name a few, I guess, Joe. And Joe has in the past earned All-Ireland championships with both Connemaras, and also I was surprised to see with an Irish Draft foal, Joe. And twice crowned Clifton champion, RDS champion, qualified for Hoyes, and of course Banks Timber was supreme champion at Olympia in 2018 with Sandra Burton in the saddle. So the topic this evening is to discuss, I suppose, producing Connemaras and drafts, both for show success and indeed for commercial return at the same time, and delving into some examples, I guess, and experiences from both of you in that sense. So just a note to viewers at home that, of course, as always with these, if you're a new time viewer with us, we love to receive your questions in. At the bottom of your screens, you should see a Q&A tab, and you can use that Q&A tab to submit your questions. If you're not familiar with the process here, we will be using a screen share shortly. I'm just actually going to get that set up. And whilst I'm doing that, I won't be in a position to actually view your Q&As, but I will drop out of the screen share from time to time during the discussion. So bear with us, and when we do drop out of that, we will be in a position to view your questions. So do please make use of that Q&A tab and submit your questions as we go. So guys, I suppose, look, we'll rock on in, make the best value of the time, and start the discussion off. And look, this first slide here is included in the sense of discussing, I suppose, the essence of a training scale. And I'm going to go to Victoria to start with on this. And I suppose, Victoria, look, you know, maybe just give us as an opener your perspective in relation to the relevance of these steps in thinking about, and I suppose, you know, going through the motions of a training program, whatever the goal is that's in mind.
Yes, good evening, Wendy. So I'm going to try and speak a little bit slower than I normally do with a northern accent.
You're all right.
I've got to keep it calm. The training scale is a really, really valuable tool for me, not only as a producer or a rider, but more so as a coach. Mainly it will allow me to bring a little bit of order and find out whereabouts in the training scale we're sitting with each animal or with each rider. And maybe what chapters have been left out, what do I need to address? We start out, I suppose, a little bit back to front with a discussion with what the judge is looking for. So if we can find out what the judge is looking for in the beginning, then I can work backwards. And certainly rhythm. My riders will always back me whenever I say the word rhythm. They sleep rhythm, they eat rhythm. They are tortured with the word rhythm, because that to me is the basis of everything in a riding horse. So what we try to do is make everything very predictable for the horses, for the riders. Rhythm is about predictability and making everything very calm and very confident through making it predictable. So using rhythm as the start tool, we would right back to lunge pen and breaking. We would start there, try to make everything extremely predictable from day dot and build from there, right the way through to the show ring. Once they're in the show ring, obviously the judge is looking for a very calm and even rhythm in the jumping, particularly. That's your way of going, that you're always striving towards is rhythm, finding an even canter, finding an adequate canter or a good enough canter to jump a really good round and hopefully jump a clear round. So relaxation is something that I probably spend the most time with. Personally, as a rider, I spend the most time with relaxation. I tend to use the early stages and the breaking to bring them out on the long reins, to go to the beach, to go to the forest. I've got slightly different views of breaking. I don't tend to stay on the roads or on laneways, and particularly in the arena. My horses would see an awful lot of hacking, beaches, forests, anything. We cross country school on the long reins before they're even backed. So that's all targeted towards both relaxation and connection. I'm very lucky I break most of my own horses. As a coach, I don't always get to have an influence on the breaking, but we certainly get to pick up and fill in any chapters that might have been, in our mind, left out for what the judge will be looking for. So yeah, the relaxation, we try to put a really strong and solid foundation to keep the horses really relaxed and happy throughout. I'm not a believer in exposing horses to as much stress as possible to get them used to it. I'm quite the opposite. I would expose them to as much confidence and as calm environments as I can, different environments, but keeping everything very controlled to build a confidence, so as that when I bring them into a stressed environment or a very atmospheric environment, then they tend to be able to cope a lot better. So that's the approach that I take on both a riding and producing perspective and from a coaching perspective, which is slightly different because a lot of people traditionally would have said we need to get out to as many shows as possible to get them used to it. Well, I find if without the foundation and without that solid work, going to the beach, going to the forest, all of the little bits and pieces that we do in the background, they just don't mentally cope with it. And they don't mentally cope with those environments that we later ask them to go into in Dublin and Hoys and Balmoral and all the top, the NIF, Northern Ireland Festival, with all the music and the atmosphere that we're asking them to cope with. So where am I? Connection? Well, again, breaking, I suppose. For me, it's a really, really nice, we have a connection with the riders, we have connections with the horses. We try to really encourage people to go to the groundwork, which Joe will really touch on and show you the value of. We try to encourage people to use, certainly where children are concerned, all the young handler classes, anything that you can get to in hand to create that connection between rider and horse before you can create the connection between the hand and the leg and create that connection through the riding aids. We would use slightly different methods in that we swim a lot of our horses. We do that on our feet. We go in swimming in hand, then we swim on their back.
And we'll come back to talk about some elements of those as we go on in the conversation, of course.
Yeah, you know? I think we've got videos and bits and pieces to demonstrate what sort of things we do. We use a lot of very, very simple low-level cross-country schooling to create all rhythm, relaxation, connection and impulsion. I would be a great fan of the lunge pen, not for necessarily for lunging, but for creating that little bit of confidence and connection as well. So I'll probably stop there, because when we bring in the examples of the different horses, the impulsion for me is sparkle or ring craft, or bringing that little bit extra into the ring, and the straightness is the collaboration of all of the stuff that we've done and really putting it into practice. So we'll see that probably later on. But I think where the key part that from a riding perspective is often left out is where Joe is going to really show the strength, and that for me is the in hand and the groundwork, which a lot of people seem to leave out whenever they're talking about a riding horse, or they rush it. You know, they're in an awful rush to get up on their backs and start going. And that's, it's been a strength for me, because I don't rush that side of things, and I don't let people that I coach rush that side of things. So when we go into an arena, please God, the horses always halt and they stand still, and they stay still for judges to get on and off. They've done all that groundwork. And certainly whenever you're faced with an in-hand situation where people are cheering and clapping, or flags are blowing, the horses know how to deal with that. And
I might actually just bring Joe in at that point there, Victoria, in the sense of, like, Joe, you know, from your perspective, and people, I suppose, as much as you've had the success with the ridden side of things as well too, with Sandra and whatnot, but like, you're very much associated with that, with the in-hand and with that production. Like, how does this sort of scale sit with you, and, you know, how important do you see it in the sense of your own production as well?
Yeah, well, as Victoria said, every element in this really does come into in-hand production as well, and in that same order, really. And I know as we go through the presentation, there's a couple of examples of that, which I can show you. But you know, in terms of like getting the pony into a right rhythm, you know, even just being totally responsive to what it is that you're asking. You're asking for a nice forward walk, you know, you're asking for a collected walk at times, to give yourself space, as Victoria said, like around ring craft. So you need to be able to draw them forward and bring them back at different times. And the relaxation, I suppose, in particular, as you mentioned, Wendy, like, we do work with a lot of stallions, and obviously, you know, show season is usually taking place in the height of covering season. So you're probably right in there with mares, you know, particularly if you're lucky enough to get into a championship. There's probably some mares, maybe even some foals in there. So obviously the stallions need to be relaxed enough to understand that this isn't covering time. And again, as Victoria said, you know, that they're exposed to enough things that they can adjust their mindset, you know, that, okay, I'm at a show, this is what we do at shows, and, you know, when I'm at home and I'm doing this, and this is where I cover, you know, all these different things. So that is, again, where the connection comes in. You know, when you're working with the horses and ponies every day, you would hope that that connection would be firmed every single time you bring them out. When they're doing something right, you're reassuring them. You know, when they're doing something wrong, you're showing them the right way to go about it. So as I said, yeah, every element of that really does come into play in hand as well.
Mm-hmm. So we might just get into talking through some examples and how they resonate as well, you know. Victoria, you might just speak to us a little bit about Edie, and we'll see some of the photographs in a moment. I'm just not able to shift our cameras out of the vantage at the minute. But introduce Edie to us, would you, please, Victoria?
Edie is a very, very special pony that I was very blessed to coach with her rider when she was at home in Ireland, Phoebe Beaumont. Uh-huh. So Edie's very commonly known to all of us as Russia. So that's her home name. So we'll talk about Russia, if that's okay. But she was a very, very special pony. She started out with Phoebe when Phoebe was very young and very novice, and the two of them very much grew up together. They had phenomenal success throughout the time that they were together, starting out 2016. I think even in 2016, the under 16 working hunter pony and ridden under 16 in Clifton, they won both of those classes that year. And that was the very early days. So that just showed us a little bit of what they were made of. They went on to do exceptionally well throughout Ireland and England. They went to BSPS. They won championships at Northern Ireland Festival. She narrowly missed out on qualifying for Hoys in 2017. She was second in the Hoys qualifier in NIF. But actually that turned out to be a blessing, because when we relate that back to the training scale or our production, she wouldn't have been ready. Phoebe probably wouldn't have been ready herself, although she's the coolest child I have ever coached. She has no nerves and she has zero emotions, and she's always ready to do her job. So that really helps whenever you're a coach and you're saying, is everything okay? Do you feel okay? And then you notice actually you're more nervous than the child is.
Yes, but you did actually get to Hoys.
She did the following year, in 2017, she won a lot of local stuff. She won a lot of, I think it was 2018, she won the Hoys qualifier. She went on to win 2 classes at Balmoral.
I might just put on a video of that here.
This was the actual Hoys final, but she won the qualifier in the Northern Ireland Festival. She then went on to win both the Platted 143 and the Connemara at Balmoral, and I think reserve champion. Let me just check. So she was working hunter, pony champion 143 M&M in NIF, and then champion Platted 143 in Balmoral. And then later, BSPS, she did very, very well in the summer championships. She had quite a few, she had a win and a few placings there. And then I tortured her for the whole summer. Prior to Hoys, I had her mum cutting trees out of her own garden and building cross-country fences, and we put up all sorts of lines. We did a lot of research online to see what sort of fences we were going to be up against in the final. We tried to expose her to as much in a controlled environment and build both their confidence up. Meanwhile, you can see the rhythm she's in. The pony just does not budge out of that same way of going. And Phoebe, as cool as ever, just rides the round of her life that day at Hoys. I don't think I've ever been as nervous that day.
But you know, what does it really mean, I guess, in the sense of, you know, the added value and the not that this pony is for sale, because she's not.
No, she's with a lovely new family in England. There's her new partner is Jasmine, and Jasmine and Rasha have been very successful already. So she's definitely not for sale. But value-wise, this pony has a CV like I've never seen before. She literally, they were very carefully planned outings. They trained to perfection. I've never known dedication like it in training. So not just a Hoys win, but the whole CV was extremely consistent. The pony is extremely versatile. She show jumped, she did dressage, she did pony club. She won at the highest level in working hunter, as you can see from that round. She was an exceptional pony for Phoebe to learn, but she was also an exceptional pony in her own right with her own CV. So value-wise, I think if you were ever to have a pony like this and you got results like this, you could probably ask what you like. That from a mother's point of view, this is the pony that you would always want to set your child up on, because we used to nickname her Mama Rasha, because she was just such a lovely, lovely person, so consistent, but the kindest pony that you could ask for a child. Just
that's such an important point, really, isn't it? You know,
zero quirks. I think her biggest fault ever was that she might jog a little on the way home. If you were packing, that's literally that's her worst fault. Or she might pull you to get a little bit of grass. If you were at a show standing holding her and she got bored, she might pull you a little bit to get a grass. That's it. She's a fantastic.
Joe, like you've experienced showing in England as well, and you know, and I suppose the different, you know, the different size, variety of shows, variety of showing classes, and you know, I mean, what's your take on, you know, the opportunities that present themselves marketing wise and market wise in the UK? And you're on mute there now at the moment as well.
Yeah, so as you said, like the different opportunities that come from, you know, occasions like Hoys and just watching that ring, I'm getting goosebumps again, you know, knowing what it's like to go in there, and I've been lucky enough to qualify for the in-hand final there at Hoys a couple of times, and I suppose from there then there are opportunities that come from that, you know, be it showing ponies for other people or producing ponies for people. Which is amazing, but I suppose there's very few differences from our own aspect of it. So that we put in the same type of preparation, you know, try and reach the same standard, you know, all the time. Be it for a local show here, or you know, that there might be, you know, 50 ponies max at the whole show, or you know, going to one of the big shows, and obviously, you know, there's nerves on both days. you know, and there's a lot of preparation that goes in. But I think even looking at this round and relating it back to the kind of the production of horses and ponies and that, and I suppose one thing to take into account is on a round like this, obviously you have your jumping round, but you also have your in-hand phase for your conformation as well as your ridden phase. So, you know, the elements that we spoke about at this very start, you know, the relaxation, all that kind of things. So we're seeing an amazing example of rhythm here, but I'm sure in the other phases, you know, we will have had to see the relaxation and the connection, but also that straightness will need to be there right the way through and all that kind of thing. So like those other preparation pieces that go into these huge days and these qualifying days, which sometimes can be even bigger, you know, they're absolutely key, and every one of those aspects is going to add value. So when you talk about the value of this pony, maybe not just in the monetary value, but the value of each thing that we do with the pony. So from the very first day when you got the pony and bringing him, you know, out to the beach, she's probably not going to spook at a water tray then, you know, bringing her into the forest, she's not going to be fazed by those trees each side of the jump, even if they do sway for whatever reason, you know. So all of those little things, they add that value to the pony rather than the actual monetary value of her. So
I think, Joe, you made a very good point the other day whenever you said that every step adds value. And that for me just epitomizes exactly what it is that we all do, is every step adds value. And that isn't just monetary. It's adding value from a coaching point of view. It's adding value from a mum's point of view, from, you know, the overall production. But that to me epitomized everything. It's every step that you cover adds that value.
Absolutely.
And we will talk in a couple of moments, Joe, in relation to what you do at home as well from an in-hand prep perspective, you know. We might just move on to this lady here, Victoria, if you could introduce her to us, please.
This is Liz Ruastar. Liz Ruastar was bred by the late Jimmy Finnegan, who's Castlereagh, County Roscommon, and was a great supporter of all of the ponies that he breeds. And his son Seamus, I believe, has taken the stud over now since Jimmy passed away. But this pony has been a really, really versatile pony, and is a really good example for me to give you on. I mean, obviously I have quite a few photographs of her training. My daughter rides her. So we bought the pony in 2016 from my other home in Galway, from Oliver Walsh in Flower Hill, who allowed me then to go, and Oliver's place in Flower Hill, it literally has everything that I talk about in the production of horses. So we have the forest, we have the river, we have the lake, we have the cross country, all of those things. So that's kind of where I grew up, hence why I learned all of the different tools added together, really gave me that edge whenever I went to the bigger shows without having to expose the horses to too many shows. As Joe said, all of the little aspects of the forest, and I suppose overlapping all of that, bringing them up and producing them in that fashion keeps them happy and relaxed. So without drilling them in the arena, without putting their minds away or blowing their minds with stress, keeping them happy and relaxed is a really, really key part, because they get into the arena, they want to do the job for you. So this pony, that was the first thing that I noticed with her. She wanted to do the job. And no matter what we ever asked her to do, she really just wanted to get on with it. I don't believe in her whole ridden career. We've just retired her this year to stud, and she's in full. I don't think in her whole ridden career she stopped at a fence. So that's a really, really nice thing to be able to say as a mum, let alone a coach. She did a lot of ridden classes. She did some in-hand classes. She won at Clifton in hand, which was lovely. With Anya was maybe only 13, I think, at the time. She went actually and did the young breeders with Wendy. You run a super program for young people, the young breeders program, which I thought was an extremely valuable part of my daughter's education. And I was really keen. Obviously COVID has sidelined us a little bit on that, but I was really keen and still would be very keen that Anya would take part in that program. But I think young handlers classes, young breeders program, and some in-hand classes. I think no matter what level you're at or what age you're at, it's going to be a valuable part of the production for the Connemara. This pony was produced using all of that, and probably the most versatile pony that you could look for. So this video just shows a little bit of the cavaletti work that we would do at home. What we're looking for here is that she has the ability to make the distance that we ask her to in between the cavaletti, and the ability to either land on the correct lead or change lead. We've got a straight line distance there on, I think, 4 strides. We've got a bending line distance here. And again, just trying to create that rhythm without changing too much. This is just a double. I'm following my way through this video myself too. Yeah, and a little leg change. So this is just a really nice, easy way, without asking too much, that you can repeat and teach the pony to go in the manner that we're going to ask them to go in a working hunter or in a performance class. And this for me applies very much to Connemara performance classes. It's this sort of work that we would do as the very, very basis of that way of going. This is actually a little draft mare that we're going to talk about maybe a little bit later on. She's very, very successful in performance classes and working hunter. A little bit higher level at this stage than the Connemara, than the dun pony, but she was second in Dublin in the performance draft in Dublin, and beaten by Killeneck Bouncer.
But I suppose the point being that, you know, that this kind of work and these kind of exercises and the variety of what you do as well, it's as applicable with the horses and with the drafts as it is with the ponies. Like, it's not exclusive to one or the other.
Very much. We use this for sport horses, for anything that we produce at all to go to working hunter or performance classes. I mean, by right, this should be across the board. This should be for show jumping horses as well. Anything that's jumping should be fit to do this sort of work, and riders should be training with that level of discipline. But I think often this is left out in favor of going to shows and jumping tracks of fences that perhaps the horses aren't educated enough to jump. So this, in my opinion, is a really, really valuable tool to use at home, and it's very, very basic. It's very small. There's pictures of the amount of water that we use in our training. This pony particularly, we use that's a video of her swimming. So that's Leo at Dainscroft is very kindly helping us get her fitness levels up, because Joe, I'm sure you can relate to this. We possibly had a little bit too much grass, and this pony lives on fresh air, so we had to very much mind her waistline, and we use Dainscroft, and Leo's very kindly helped us on quite a number of occasions with drafts and Connemaras to keep them fit without having to run them on hard ground or gallop the legs off them, or, you know, overcook them. We just like to try and keep things as gentle on the joints as possible, and the swimming has been a fantastic tool for me over the years.
And I guess, I suppose, coming back across to you, Joe, like, I mean, there is a saying that variety is the spice of life, and I'm sure you like to keep things some way varied out in Castlegar as well. Do you know, like, I mean, how does this resonate with you in the sense of, you know, even the production of just for in hand, you know, if we take the ridden aside from it in this context?
Yeah, I think, you know, it comes back to that bit of exposure as well, from as early on as you can, you know. So for us, we would try and keep everything fairly natural. We don't show the young stock really all too often. So we would kind of usually wait for colts in particular anyway, until they're about 3, till we're getting them ready for their inspections. At that stage, we'll start doing a little bit of kind of almost light breaking. We won't actually back them until probably later in that winter, coming into 4-year-old, but they'll be practically broken at that stage anyway. And because it's kind of we work that through right through that summer of their 3-year-old year, with, you know, if they do pass their grading, it just means that they're probably in a bit for their covering, and they're, you know, they're out as much as we can, things like that. So it kind of gives us an opportunity really to do that break-in process right through a whole summer, as opposed to try and cram it into a couple of weeks. And also then, like, if we are showing, like, we're lucky enough that a lot of the smaller shows will start earlier in the summer, things like that, that they can get out to a few of those, see how they react. If they're just taking it all in their stride, we can move on to some of the bigger stuff and keep exposing them that way. So it's exactly the same way. Like, you can see any of their, you know, out in the water and stuff, and it's very much the same thing, just exposing them really gradually to as much as we can, not just, as Victoria said, you know, rushing out to absolutely every show and trying to get them to the big shows. It's all about a kind of a bit of a linear progression, that, you know, you can see them moving from one step to the next, and that they haven't missed out on a big chunk of their education, which will come back to bite them, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And I'm just going to bob this one on, Victoria, maybe talk to us about the stage that we're at with the age of the pony, the age of the handler, and the class.
I've got to work out what the age of the pony and the age of the handler was.
Roughly even.
2018, I think, 2018 Dublin. 2019, excuse me. So this Anya would have been 13 at the time. This is actually a really good example. We have a pony jumping while we're doing the in-hand. So when we're talking about having a pony concentrating and happy and relaxed and focused enough on its handler, that all of those people in that stand can clap for the people that have just finished jumping, and you can still manage. Quite a lot of the ponies didn't manage, and they shot sideways or they ran away a bit. So the fact that the pony can stand up and focus on its handler, it can walk away and it can trot back in a straight line without spooking, you know, that shows to me that the homework is done and the pony is focused and able to relax in that environment, with flags just behind it, a full crowd clapping. That's what we're training for all the time. She's a little bit fussy at the beginning there. So you can see, then we got her to stand, and then she stands really, really well. Well, obviously that's down to the young handler there.
But I think that's where the connection comes in as well, isn't it? You know, you can see her literally giving her the pony wasn't just 100% confident to stand. You can see Annie then coming in and actually giving her own confidence to say, no, actually, it's okay to stand here, and this is what I want you to do. Yeah. And that's the connection part back again, and that leads back into your relaxation of the pony. And you can see so clearly from this that she's been shown in hand, because she's not been dragged. She's got the impulsion. She's walking forward, and particularly when she turns to come back, the minute she's asked to trot on, she does. And unfortunately, a lot of ridden ponies just don't do that. You know, they are being dragged and they're losing marks there. When you think of a lot of these marked classes, that's where they're losing out. And some of the top eventers in the world will tell you that they work a lot on their in-hand phase for their trot-ups.
Yeah. It's so vitally important, though, because those are easy marks for a ridden pony. And it's an easy way to lose a class, is not to have that homework done.
Absolutely. And you know, we talked before in relation to, like, this idea of, I guess, training to in advance to kind of allow the pony or the horse to cope with the arena pressure or the environmental, you know, distractions and so forth. Victoria, I'll hand that to you. Like, you know, I mean, how much of that can be prepared for?
Everything. This is what I live, because the old school way of thinking is you expose the horse to as much stress as possible, and the horse will then learn to cope with this stress. And I'm a huge believer in that it's completely the opposite. If you expose the horse to as much confidence and as much controlled environmentals, as we would say, if you give that horse the confidence, or if you have that connection, as Joe said, if the horse starts to feel insecure at any point, you can step in, take control and say, no, it's okay. I say it's okay. And they breathe again. They take their deep breath. When you take your deep breath, and they work. And as long as they're happy and relaxed, they will work for you in any scenario. And that's what we're training towards. It's the difference in exposing them to far too much stress and expecting them to learn to cope, or exposing them to so many different environments that they become confident and learn to cope.
And I mean, Joe, I know I know you probably want to resonate again when we come to talk about your own animals, but you know, you have sort of said this thing about like kind of adding one new thing at a time as well too.
Yeah, definitely. You know, with the when you take it back to, you know, breaking and trying to do that groundwork, and I do see it a bit when I see people breaking and they might, you know, be going really well all the way through, and the day they go to get on, they put on their good saddle and a different bridle with a different bit, and then they get try and get on. So now the pony has to cope with absolutely everything is different. You know, I've learned none of this before. So when you think about it, you know, if you're got your saddle on and they're used to that saddle, the fit and the shape, and you know, and then they're used to their bit and they're used to that, then they only have to cope with one element, you know, which is the person on their back. So that's all they have to think about on the day, and then they can move forward from that. And again, you're giving them that confidence and you're saying, look, it's only me, it's okay, we can, you know, we'll move on together. So it works very much the same way. You often find with some of the young ponies on the first day out, I find anyway, if you've got your homework done, they seem to travel with you because they know you, they're getting their confidence from you. If everything else, it is obviously going to be their first time at a show. But if you've got your homework done, they're kind of relying on you then because they are flight animals at the end of the day. So, you know, if they have that kind of trust in you to say, yeah, absolutely, I'll go with whatever you're saying. If you're telling me it's okay to go over here, you know, I'll do that for you. So yeah, just back to that trust and the relaxation and trying to get that rhythm, then they'll all come if you can get that.
Absolutely. And I am just a note to the audience, I am going to pop out in a second and just check for the questions that have come in. Just bear with me a moment. But yeah, I suppose, you know, I mean, here, Victoria, like obviously with this pony, you know, we've demonstrated the versatility of the pony and the character of the pony and the performance of the pony as indeed here. But, you know, again, like I suppose you're demonstrating again that this is a very marketable commodity. This isn't again for sale, you know, she is in foal, but we're just trying to, I suppose, provide some examples, I guess, to relate to what the market is actually looking for out there.
Look, I completely agree with you. We had this discussion before and I laughed because this pony will never be for sale. She's literally like my third child.
Yeah.
So, to me, she's an exceptionally marketable pony. If I went to put her on the market and sell her, she has now won ridden classes, she's won working hunter, she has won eventing, and she's an exceptional athlete all around. She adapts to any scenario, but it goes back to the amount of work that was done in those early days, and she wasn't rushed at all, because I really wasn't ready for her whenever we initially bought her. I saw her whenever I went down on my usual trips to Flower Hill to work or to play or to really relax, and I spotted her in the field. I loved her and I bought her. I probably wasn't ready for her, so she had extra time in groundwork and she had extra time to develop and grow up a little bit with us. But yes, marketability for her comes with that she is extremely versatile. She's been very, very well educated. She's safe. So all of the predictable stuff that we have done has created a very, very secure, very confident pony that now doesn't rely so much on the rider to give her confidence. She's now at the stage of her production that she can give confidence, which I think is the flip that a lot of people are going to be looking for. And we'll touch later a little bit with, I feel very much that that's the case with Irish Draughts.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that. I'm just conscious of the time a little bit as well. So we will come back in to pick that back up with the Draughts, okay?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, super. So Joe, sorry Victoria, just to mind with the clock here as well too. And here maybe Joe, if you could just introduce us here, and I'll flip over in a second onto some visuals here and just talk to us about an ear, please.
Sure, yeah. We so this is an ear cashel, so he's homebred. He's by Banks Timber and out of a Cloonisle cashel mare. So I suppose we just touched on you know, a kind of a linear progression of ponies in terms of producing them for the show ring. And I think an ear is a really good example of that, because, you know, right from the start, I suppose he was very much planned, in that his dam was a little bit older when she bred him, but we were very eager to try and get a colt off her, and particularly by Banks Timber. Timber, his all of his qualities would have really suited the mare. So right from the get-go, we were delighted with the foal we had, and the decision was made to kind of keep him out with some other colts right up until he was 3, and again just start to bring him in that summer, get him ready for his inspections, which I think one of the first top right hand photo isn't too far after that. So you can see that he's younger looking, he has this bigger frame, so it was very much about keeping, taking him really slowly and bringing him through the ranks. And you can see then on the bottom right hand corner, where he is, like, that's the end of the season, that's at Clifton, so he is a little bit more mature there right the way through. But the plan being all the time for him is to get to the higher levels, get to the Dublins, the Cliftons, the Hoys, all those things, which he's still kind of in progress of doing. And you can see here then, as he's gotten older, when he was 5, then he went over to Sandra Burton in the UK to be produced, ridden. He actually ended up qualifying for the in-hand at Hoys on that first year. And again, he was just a little bit immature, so we took him out, Sandra took him out, done all the novice classes ridden with him, to try and just get that bit of exposure again. He probably could have stepped up to the open classes, but we just made the decision not to do that, not to overexpose him. And I went back and over to the UK in a time when you could, and showed him quite a bit in hand, and just getting him ready for that Hoys experience, and bringing him to some bigger indoor shows that might just prepare him for things like the music, all of that. So it was all about really just a kind of a progression. And then the following year, again, he came out, he qualified for Hoys in his first time ridden, and he went to Hoys and he got one of the highest ride marks there. And the following day then he went back in and went in hand. So there's very few ponies that can do both jobs, but I think because we took the time to get him there, he was really easily able to adapt from one to the other. He's since come home, he's covering now, which is great. It's just a really good break for him, just to switch his mind up again to that job. Now, in saying that, he still hacks out on the road and stuff, so he's still just keeping that in the back of his mind, that there is work to be done, even though he's enjoying himself this summer and last. But at some point he will probably go back into full ridden work, and take a break from the covering and stuff. So I think it's just a really good example of right from the get-go. I suppose we were lucky enough to know, or Dad was lucky enough to identify him as a foal having this amazing potential, and then we were able to kind of really produce him, and really say, okay, year 1, this is what we want him to be, and year 2, year 3, and then year 4, he actually had a bit of a break because there was very few in-hand classes for him, and it was just all about covering and just breaking and that, and then he went over to start with Sandra.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, I mean, in the back, as much as we are here talking about your stallions as well, like it is as much as anything, it's about relating these messages across to whether it's mares or whether it's geldings or whether it's other young stock, the same messages emulate, and whether we're talking Draughts or we're talking Connies, these messages emulate across all spheres in that regard. Yeah,
they do, absolutely. I suppose I'm really talking about the groundwork and the in-hand piece, because it is something that you can do, regardless really of your facilities, I suppose, even if it is for production, for sales and that. The majority of the time we do a lot of our work on the road. We're lucky enough to live on a cul-de-sac, so there isn't a huge amount of traffic, but just enough so that, again, they're exposed to cars, tractors, things like that. So in getting young ponies ready for things like inspections, just for even their training for, to walk with you and things like that, it's so handy to be able to take them out on the roads and that kind of thing. And that's something that the majority of people can do. And I suppose if there's ever a need for somebody else to do it, there are lots and lots of people who will do that for you as well. So in terms of production for sales, you know, they really are the basics as well. You know, you do want a buyer to come and you want to be able to show them the best aspects of the pony. The pony could have beautiful conformation and amazing movement, but if you're not able to show that, it's very hard for a buyer just to take your word for it because you've seen it one day in the field. So those things, you know, are key to be able to get that across.
So important, isn't it? And you just introduce us here to Manor Duke as well.
Yeah,
Joe.
so I suppose Anir was a good example of that kind of progression, and what Duke is probably a good example of all of those things that we spoke about in terms of the training scale, you know, your rhythm, relaxation, connection, impulsion, your straightness and collection. So Manor Duke is owned by Noel Noonan from Manor Connemara, and we just are lucky enough to stand Duke with us and produce him for shows as well. So Duke's story was that he was bred by Noel Noonan, as I said, and he then went out and he was classified at 3. He went over to the UK to be produced for ridden at 4. Again, like a lot of Connemara's, he was probably just a little bit immature at the time. Now, it didn't stop him doing well. He qualified for quite a few of the big classes, for Royal International and for the Picton Novice Final and things like that. He went on to win a couple of Opens, and he kind of excluded himself then from a lot of the novice stuff that maybe he could have been doing at 4, 5 and 6 even, which is nice for them to do, again, for that bit of exposure. Because of that, I suppose he was ineligible for his novice stuff, but he was also too young, maybe a little too immature, both physically and mentally, at 5 to go right up into the open stuff and, you know, right up and compete at the highest level. So they made just the decision then to bring him back and just take it a little step back and you know, put him back into in-hand. Obviously, he's a really good example of a stallion, so to breed from him is his main aim, or else there'd be no point in keeping him entire. So he then came to stand with us, and I think if we flick between this slide, and this one here, you can see, if we just go back to the previous slide there, so we can see that bottom left hand photo there where he's moving. So this is one of the first years I had Duke. I think he might be 6 there, and that's at Clifton. Now he did go on to win on the day, and he was great. That was fantastic. But I suppose when we look at things like, you know, so we can see at this stage he is starting to develop his rhythm. He's starting to develop his relaxation, and I think hopefully you can see, I suppose, just the fact that we're in step, that we have that kind of maybe connection, that, you know, the rhythm is coming, the relaxation, the connection. But if you just flip forward to the next slide there, so up at the top right hand corner there, you can see that's in 2019. So obviously there's a couple of years between that. So I think he's there, he might be 8, I think, in that one. So that's just the difference between the work that we have done, but in the interim. So like, obviously we had the rhythm, we had the relaxation and connection in the others, but here we really, you can see from that top right hand photo that he had the impulsion. You can see from the middle photo on the top that he has the straightness, and then the collection obviously is visible, like in that top right hand photo as well. And, you know, the relaxation, you can see it in the left hand side where there's literally no pressure on the rein. That's a class full of stallions, you know, really buzzy environment, but he's really kind of listening to me all the time, just watching, waiting for what's his next cue, what's his next move. And like, that's something that obviously takes quite a lot of time and a lot of work, but it really does pay off if you can bring them through that whole process, you know. Like,
you're a perfectionist at heart in that regard as well too, Joe. And Victoria, just like to pick up on a point as such, like I don't know whether it filtered through, but certainly to me it comes across, like allowing a novice to be a novice. And, you know, no matter how good they are, to allowing them to be at the stage that they're at.
I think so. I think you can't skip education. And that's probably key to it. You just can't skip education. And I think, you know, we have really good natured animals in Connemara's and Irish Draughts, and we're very blessed with the temperaments that come through in those lines. But all too often, I think that the problems arise whenever the education is skipped out. And that's the point that I was touching on, crossing over from the Connemara to the Draughts. It's about adding enough education and crossing enough of those steps that it's going to be a robust produced animal to set maybe potentially a more novice rider on, or in Joe's case, a more novice handler, that the pony can then begin to teach the rider or the handler the job and go in and achieve the same success. That's what we're always striving towards, is that the success doesn't stop whenever the pony or the horse leaves us, that it moves on, it's sold on, and it continues to be successful in whatever they ask it to do. So
and
that
continues
really,
to build your reputation as well.
very much so, very much so. And I think that's really important, a really important point to make, both from the horse's point of view, is that they cannot be expected to run in open classes with no education, because it floods them, you know, mentally. As Joe was very, very concise there with the points about mentally and physically mature. They've got to be mentally and physically mature. You've got to add education to that, and then you have a fully produced animal ready to stand in a show ring in open classes in that top atmosphere. That is, that's the whole picture.
And this question then that often gets, you know, bandied about, how long will this all take? It takes what it's going to take, and each individual is each individual at the same time.
You do have to respond to what the pony needs, you know, as I said, like, you know, and that's no reflection, no poor reflection on Duke. That's just a reflection on a 5-year-old Connemara, that he just wasn't there yet. You know, he's just 10 now, and there's absolutely nothing stopping him from now returning to that piece of work, you know, and going into those big open classes, because physically he's obviously more mature, but also mentally he's been exposed to everything as well. And no more than a year, he gets hacked out every day, and he sees all of that. He understands the difference between, you know, work and his other job,
other duties. Yes.
You know, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we better move on to Draughts, Victoria. Maybe if you would introduce this animal to us, please.
Yeah, I'll just touch on the Draughts, because obviously I want to have Joe discuss as well about the social media and how valuable that is. So we'll just touch on that. But this, when you talk about the progression and the development and the maturity of the native breeds, this is a really good example, because this mare was, even at an early stage, was a winner. She loves the ring. She loves to do her job. Very, very rarely came home without a sash. Very rarely. I was very surprised if she came home without a sash, but I was blessed enough to train her rider with her. They've had phenomenal success together as a team. She allowed me a couple of times to sit up whenever she was doing university exams, or through injury, or certain circumstances arose, and I nicked the reins and got on with it, and of course had lovely results. But it's lovely to know that I'm sitting on Catherine's work and able to just sit up, press buttons, and it all happens. And that really was, it proved that the work had been done, the homework had been done. I think it was Balmoral 2018. Heather, it was Balmoral 2018. This is another one of Leo's videos. Leo's a fantastic man to have at a show. He'll always give you a great video to sell your horse. Not out media all the way.
Okay.
I was very, very blessed to sit up. I hadn't sat on the mare since Dublin the year before. They arrived at Balmoral, and I jumped up on her, I think the night before this class, and everything just works. Everything just works. It was very easy. She rode beautifully for me. We had fun. I think probably later on in this video you can see.
That's an important thing to do, actually, have fun, isn't it? You know?
Very much so. We had fun in this class. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was built quite small that year, which surprised me, because Balmoral can be quite up to height. It was built quite small, and I was this is a phenomenal jumper. I was expecting a bigger track, so I was quite surprised and a little taken aback, because she's keen, she can get quite strong. So I was looking for a bigger track, but actually she rode beautifully, and we had so much fun. You can see from my face there. I knew.
But if we can also relate this, I guess, in the sense of the commercial opportunities that are there for Draughts as well, Victoria, and you know the performance classes that are there, and you know what the market is looking for as well.
Well, this mare is, I chose all mares because I knew Joe was going to bring stallions to the party. So I had to go with my mares, but
Yeah.
none of these mares are for sale. I have been very, very blessed with a lot of geldings that we've produced to do our performance classes, and they are extremely commercial as animals when they're produced properly. If they're produced for amateurs to ride them, and it's as we talk about carrying them over, ticking all the boxes, carrying them over into a place where they can then start to teach riders, and that they're confident and produced, then they're sitting in a market which really is endless. They're not difficult animals to sell when they're produced. I don't think I've ever kept one for longer than a week if it's been known that it's for sale. And that's to England, to America, within Ireland. I'm lucky the last two I've sold, actually, I think have stayed in Ireland, which is lovely because I get to see them, and in some cases I get to train them. They're very, very commercially easy horses to sell whenever they're done right because of their temperament.
But you also, in previous conversations, Victoria, like I've heard you kind of say that the draft isn't, it's not an amateur horse until the point that it is actually produced.
Yeah.
And maybe like qualify that, or explain what you mean by that.
By saying that the draft isn't an amateur horse until it's produced, I mean that you cannot skip education because they've got a really good temperament. So you can take their temperament and you can take advantage of that to a certain degree, but it will go wrong if they're not educated. And that happens time after time. And I'm seeing it time after time as both a coach and a rider. You've got some smashing horses with very, very good temperaments that's coming through from very good breeding. We're really blessed with some really passionate Irish draft breeders. They're good to us. And I take the responsibility really seriously that if I'm given a horse that somebody has taken the time to raise it from a foal, I usually go and buy a nice 3-year-old draft each year. And I take that responsibility really seriously, that I give it the education and I give it the chance and put everything in place that it can shine without me. Ideally, I want to be able to get off and somebody else get on and it still know its job and it still want to do its job and it be happy and relaxed and confident with another rider. And that is my responsibility as a producer or as a coach. So I take that really seriously, and I hope the breeders do. I mean, I keep in touch with all the breeders of the horses that I buy, which is, it's a real pleasure to be able to send them photographs from big shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose just to acknowledge with this lady here, I mean, it's another one that you have at home that you're going to breed from, this is out of the other was out of an AID mare, and this is out of a full RID mare. So maybe just a quick introduction to this one, Victoria.
I'll just touch on this very quickly. You have to be up really early in the morning to get to ride this horse in my yard, because there's a fight. There is a fight. No matter who it is, they want to ride this horse. She's very, very versatile. She's won everything. She has been eventing. She's been working hunter. She's been ridden. She's an absolute lady. She has been a joy to produce. We've had her since she was just an unbroken horse in the field, and she is not going anywhere. I think this year we scanned her. She's not in foal, and I think we're going to bring her back into work. And we'll see how she goes. I'm not quite sure today where she's going to go this year, but she is actually a full sister to a mare, Gleneven Starlight, and Gleneven Starlight bred Beechmore Silvercrest, and some other, I think actually recently had a mare that was fully approved and with class 1. This is a class 1 mare herself, with bronze merit for jumping. And an exceptional, she's only 15.2, and she is 15.2. She's no bigger than that, but boy, she has some heart.
But I suppose the point of the essence of including the Irish draft in the conversation here this evening as well too is to emphasize again that that there are markets out there, and that these are, when produced, very much a commercial commodity. Wendy,
I could have sold this mare every day since I've had her. I don't believe we've ever had her anywhere, and there was never a question of how much was asked for her. So really, whether she retires at any stage to breed or whether she stays with us as a riding horse, she's worth everything, because she's so trustworthy, she's so consistent, she's so versatile. Again, she's a swimmer, as we would put it. She has been everywhere and she has done everything.
Yeah.
Talking from an educational point of view, this mare, I could put a very novice rider on. I actually did put my kids on her on a beach and just let them off to go and play when they were very young. And I knew that I could trust her. So that for me, you know, when we talk about the value of it, as Joe made the point earlier on, it's not just down to monetary value. A lot of people need the monetary value. They need to gain something back from breeding these horses. But I hope as producers and as a coach, I hope that I'm adding enough value to their reputation as breeders and enough value to their animals that whether or not they're sold in the end, they can still see what they've turned into and they can still see what the education has done for them.
I'm just going to pop out and have a look to see questions again. But look, we are going to shortly have to wrap up. But before we do, I do want to just, you know, obviously, I mean, we've kind of, I suppose, in past webinar last year and talking with Denise Norton and with Grace Maxwell Murphy, like we talked about having the right product, and you know, we very much focused in there on the type and what have you. And you know, here we're talking about producing them in the right way. But there is actually another sort of facet to the connection then to getting that right price or that right outlet, and that's actually doing a bit of solid marketing in between. And Joe, like just even from your own perspective, I suppose, like you're probably selling more in the way of foals or youngsters. Like what are your piece of advice or your experiences, I guess, from engaging with social media and that aspect of selling?
Yeah, so I suppose at the moment, like it's very easy to be somebody who's selling anything, you know, ponies or horses, because the demand is there. You know, the market is really strong at the moment, so it's great. But as you said, like having the right product to be able to get the best prices, you know, as a stallion owner, and I suppose somebody who stands stallions, like we're a little bit responsible for what those, we feel a little bit responsible for what those offspring finally go for, you know. So from our point of view, we like to be able to showcase the stallions so that can then go on to help in the sale of either your foals or your young stock, however you might like to keep them. But for social media, I mean, simply like a photo will sell a pony these days. You know, a good quality photo of a pony standing up correctly, turned out nicely, you know, in a nice condition. I think a lot of people, particularly the UK market, they don't really always want them broken. You know, they want them well handled, unbroken, is what I'm finding a lot anyway. So that they can either put them with somebody like Victoria to be produced, you know, and to be trained properly, because I suppose are not so much trained properly, but trained by somebody who they know is going to bring them through the ranks.
Trust, yeah,
you know, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So like that's huge, and I know from our point of view, like when we put up a photo of a pony that's for sale or a horse that's for sale, the first thing we'll get is obviously you'll get loads of messages asking, you know, what's the price, what's the breeding, what's all that. So try to have all that information straight away, just so you don't get, you know, totally sick of the whole process yourself. And also key would be videos, you know, a video of them maybe moving loose in a school or a small field somewhere where they're not too far away from you.
But that you all already have that kind of banked and available for when the query comes in, that you're not going out trying to.
You want to strike while the iron is hot as well, you know, so that when people do come back to you and they say, look, I really like the pony, and you're saying, okay, yeah, here's all the information, you know, and here's a video. Usually what I try to do when I'm doing a video is, you know, maybe 3 pieces of it. So the first piece would be them walking and trotting up in hand. The second piece is just a video of walking around the pony, and then third then will be a video of the pony either loose in the school or loose in a small field. And if they're at the age or if they have the experience of, you know, maybe jumping, loose jumping something or other, because I suppose there's no point in showing that off if it's their first time to ever look at a jump, you know, and things like that. But yeah, having a bank of that kind of information ready to go so that you can respond to those messages, you know, and have a price in your head as well, which I find a lot when I'm going out to try and buy something, is people are very unsure of what it is they want, you know, and that kind of thing. So just to be sure in your head that what you're happy with, and not to forget, I suppose, that if somebody does take on this young pony particularly, bring them through the ranks, you know, they will achieve more. you know, in 2 years' time with all the experience. And I suppose you kind of have to be happy for that person to be able to get that as well.
Absolutely. And like Victoria, from your perspective, I mean, you're probably more often in the shoe of maybe not necessarily the customer yourself, but like advising maybe the customer or somebody that is a client of yours that's looking for an animal. Like when you're in those shoes, what do you feel are like the most common kind of errors or you know, kind of mistakes that people make, I guess, you know, in connecting with you as a seller?
I think a good photograph. I think Joe's absolutely right. If I can see the confirmation from the photograph, it's caught my eye, I'll then go on to look at videos of it moving, or in my case, videos of it jumping, because obviously we want to see that sort of thing. I think having that information there on hand makes it very, very easy, because if I've been asked to go and source or go and look at something, if I'm having to go and chase that sort of information and then I'm getting videos which don't show me what I need to see, or photographs that show the pony or the horse standing up very badly, it's very, very difficult for me to see. And it's also difficult to put time into traveling for maybe up to 7, 8, 9, 10 hours to go and look at animals that we really don't know what we're going to appear to see. So if you're not sure of how to take a good photograph, try and get somebody nearby. There are quite a few people now that are really professional at that, particularly with social media. And try to get somebody that can take good photographs. It can sometimes take 200 photographs to get the right one. So don't be afraid to take 200 photographs to get the right one, because the right photograph will sell your animal probably without anybody even having to come and see it. And as Joe said, have good videos on, not lengthy videos, but short clips of the pony walking away, trotting back, standing up properly, and potentially moving free and jumping free.
And I suppose the message, what both of you are saying in that regard, is be prepared and don't compromise.
Yeah. Show the pony off the best you can. You know, a bad photograph is going to ruin it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look at, I mean, you've both been brilliant. You've shared a lot inside of an hour and 37 minutes, and the joys of this experience is that the clock just keeps pushing, keeps going, but it has been a real pleasure from my perspective to have spoken with both of you, and I know that, you know, there's many other areas that we could probably delve into, and for another day we may well come back and do that. For the present, I suppose, you know, is there any parting piece of advice that you Victoria would like to proffer to people out there?
Don't cut out the education. Don't leave out the steps. I mean, I think, to Nick Joe's phrase, I love that. I really think that epitomizes it. Every step adds value. And that, I'm going to steal that because he'll have nothing. No, I think, you know, it's easy marks to pick up whenever you're educating the horse properly, and don't leave out the in-hand phase. You know, it's not an afterthought. You're sitting there with loads of marks to gain. And you have your boxes ticked, you have your horse well educated, you'll go and enjoy your show. You're not going to be sitting there thinking it's all going to go wrong, everything's going to, you know, get out there and enjoy your horses, keep them happy and relaxed, educate them, and then you don't have to teach them to get used to stress, because stress doesn't come into it.
That's a good message for all of us. That's a life lesson.
Yeah, that's a hard one to follow.
And you know, things. And Joe, yourself, in terms of a parting comment or parting piece of advice for people.
Yeah, well, I suppose two things. The first one would be, like, as Victoria said, like, preparation, you know, is key. And that's whether that comes to, you know, producing your ponies for showing. Obviously, you know, don't leave out the small things, you know, whether it be in your own training or even in your turnout and things like that. It's like, you know, have all that prepared and as early in advance as you can. And as Victoria said, you know, the rest will just happen. The show will go on, you know, whether you have it done or not. And if you have it done, you know, at least you'll enjoy it. And then in terms of your production for sales, I mean, same as we just said, you know, be prepared as well, and just have that information to hand. And like, I'm guilty myself of not having it at times, you know, or putting up a photo just because I think it's a nice photo, and then somebody approaches you to sell, and, you know, maybe you're not just prepared and things like that. So, but just try in as much as you can. And as Victoria said, if you're not, you know, tech savvy or are just not up on that kind of stuff, there are so many people now who will be only more than happy to help with that kind of thing. And then the second thing I just wanted to say before we finish up is just thanks so much, Wendy, for inviting us on this evening. And just for organising the whole series of webinars, because they're all so informative, all the previous ones. So if anyone hasn't checked them out, just to look at the back catalogue.
That's courtesy of the panelists and guests and the quality thereof. So that is appreciated on both sides. And with that mention, Joe, there was somebody was querying will there be a recording available afterwards? On the basis that the technology works tonight, yes. www.teagasc.ie/Let's Talk Equine. And the recording should be made available there shortly. So huge thanks to the pair of you. Huge thanks to our audience at home who have stuck with us along the way. And just to mention also that Let's Talk Equine is going on a little summer break, and we'll return again in October. And it's an extended summer break, but there's a few other jobs that I need to attend to. Don't worry, I'm not heading off to Mallorca or anywhere like that. Until October, stay safe, everybody. Much appreciated having you along. So the Zoom machine is quite abrupt in the finish. So good night for now, and thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.